I want you to imagine waking up every single day feeling like you're drowning in your own life. That was me 3 years ago. I was 32, living in a cramped studio apartment in Cleveland, working a soul-crushing data entry job, and I honestly couldn't remember the last time I felt genuinely happy. But here's the thing that still gives me chills when I think about it. In exactly 18 months from that lowest point, I was standing on the balcony of my dream home in Austin, running my own successful online business, surrounded by people who truly loved me. And it all started with one book I found in a coffee shop dumpster. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share with you might sound impossible. But I promise you, every word is true. My name is Maya, and this is the story of how I literally manifested a completely different life. Let me paint you a picture of where I was. It was February 2021, and Cleveland was buried under this gray, endless winter that seemed to match exactly how I felt inside. I'd wake up at 6:30 a.m. to the sound of my upstairs neighbor's screaming baby, drag myself to a job where I spent 8 hours entering numbers into spreadsheets, then come home to eat microwave dinners while binge-watching Netflix until I passed out on my lumpy couch. I want you to understand, this wasn't just a rough patch. This was my life. Had been my life for almost 4 years. After college, I'd moved to Cleveland because it was cheap, thinking I'd figure things out. But somewhere along the way, I stopped trying. I stopped dreaming. I stopped believing that anything could ever be different. My relationship with my family was strained. My mom would call every few weeks, and I could hear the worry in her voice when she'd ask how I was doing. Fine, I'd always say, which was the biggest lie I told on a regular basis. I had maybe 2 friends, and even they were drifting away because, honestly, who wants to hang out with someone who radiates misery? The worst part wasn't even the loneliness or the boredom. It was this feeling that I was watching my life happen to someone else. Like I was trapped behind glass, screaming, but no sound was coming out. I'd look in the mirror and barely recognize myself. My eyes had this emptiness that scared me. I remember one specific Tuesday in February. It was snowing again, of course, and I was walking home from work when I saw this woman about my age getting into this beautiful silver BMW. She was laughing on the phone, wearing this gorgeous coat, and she just looked so alive, so confident, so free. I stood there in my thrift store jacket, watching her drive away, and I literally said out loud, "How is she living in a completely different world than me?" That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in years, I felt this deep, aching longing for something more. Not just more money or a better job, but a completely different existence. I wanted to feel the way that woman looked. I wanted to wake up excited about my day. I wanted to matter, to make a difference, to feel alive. But I had absolutely no idea how to get there. The next few weeks were probably the darkest of my entire life. That glimpse of what was possible had awakened something in me, but it also made my current reality feel even more suffocating. I started having what I can only describe as panic attacks about my future. I'd be at work, entering data, and suddenly I'd be hit with this overwhelming terror that this was it. This was my life, forever. I tried the usual things. I updated my resume, applied for different jobs, looked into going back to school, but everything felt impossible. I didn't have money for school, I wasn't qualified for better jobs, and honestly, I didn't even know what I wanted to do. I felt completely trapped. One particularly bad day in March, I called in sick to work because I literally couldn't stop crying. I spent the entire day in bed, scrolling through social media, looking at other people's lives and feeling like I was watching a movie about a world I'd never be allowed to enter. That's when something inside me broke. Not in a bad way, in a necessary way. I remember sitting up in bed and saying out loud, "This cannot be my life. I refuse to accept that this is all there is for me." It was the first time in years that I'd spoken with any kind of conviction about anything. I didn't know it then, but that moment of absolute desperation and absolute determination was about to change everything. The very next day, I was walking to work and decided to stop at this little independent coffee shop I'd never been to before. It was called The Grind, and it had this warm, cozy atmosphere that was the complete opposite of the chain coffee place I usually went to. I ordered my coffee and was about to leave when I noticed they had a little free book exchange in the corner. You know, one of those take a book, leave a book things. I was a few minutes early for work, so I wandered over to browse. Most of the books were romance novels or mystery thrillers, but then I saw this small, slightly worn paperback that seemed to be glowing. And I know how that sounds, but I swear that's how it felt. The title was The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. I'd never heard of it, but something about it called to me. I grabbed it, fully intending to return it later, and hurried to work. During my lunch break, I started reading, and within the first few pages, I felt like someone had reached into my chest and grabbed my heart. Wattles was talking about the power of thought, about how we create our reality through our mental images and beliefs. He said that poverty and struggle weren't inevitable. They were choices we made unconsciously. I want you to understand, I was the most skeptical person you could imagine. I'd always rolled my eyes at anything that seemed remotely woo-woo. But something about the way Wattles explained it, the logic behind it, resonated with me on a level I couldn't explain. That night, I devoured the entire book. Then I went online and discovered this whole world I'd never known existed. The law of attraction, manifestation, conscious creation. Names like Rhonda Byrne, Neville Goddard, Bob Proctor. For the first time in years, I felt hope. I spent the next 2 weeks consuming everything I could find. I watched The Secret, read Napoleon Hill, listened to Abraham Hicks videos on YouTube, and slowly a picture started forming in my mind of who I could become and what my life could look like. But here's what nobody tells you about the law of attraction. Believing it intellectually is completely different from feeling it in your bones. For weeks, I tried to practice what I'd learned, but I felt like I was playing pretend. I'd stand in front of my bathroom mirror trying to do affirmations, but the voice in my head would immediately start laughing at me. I am wealthy and abundant, I'd say, and my reflection would seem to mock me. I am living my dream life, I'd whisper, surrounded by my depressing studio apartment. The doubt was crushing. Part of me started wondering if I'd just found a new way to torture myself, dangling this impossible dream in front of my face. But then I remembered something Neville Goddard had said about the importance of feeling the wish fulfilled. He talked about creating such a vivid mental experience of your desired reality that your subconscious mind couldn't tell the difference between imagination and memory. So I decided to try something different. Every night before bed, I started what I called my future memory practice. I would lie in my bed, close my eyes, and instead of trying to fall asleep in my current reality, I would imagine falling asleep in my dream life. I created this incredibly detailed vision. I was living in Austin, Texas, in this beautiful house with hardwood floors and huge windows that let in streams of golden sunlight. I could feel the warm Texas breeze coming through the windows. I could smell coffee brewing in my gorgeous kitchen. I could hear birds chirping in the oak trees outside. In this vision, I ran my own business helping other people transform their lives. I didn't know exactly what that looked like yet, but I could feel the satisfaction of doing work that mattered, work that made a difference. I could feel the excitement of waking up each day knowing I was building something meaningful. I imagined having deep, loving relationships. I could see myself laughing with friends over dinner, having long, meaningful conversations. I could feel what it was like to be truly seen and appreciated for who I was. Most importantly, I imagined feeling completely free. Free from anxiety, free from that crushing sense of being trapped, free to be myself fully and completely. The first few nights, it felt silly, but I kept doing it, and something strange started happening. The vision became more and more real. I could actually feel the emotions of that future life, the joy, the peace, the excitement, the gratitude. And then something even stranger started happening in my waking life. It began with small things. I'd be walking down the street and randomly find a $20 bill. My coffee shop started giving me free drinks because they said I had good energy. A coworker who'd never spoken to me before invited me to lunch. At first, I dismissed these as coincidences, but they kept happening, and they were starting to align perfectly with my visualizations. One day in April, I was doing my usual visualization when I had this crystal clear image of myself sitting in a specific coffee shop in Austin. I'd never been to Austin, but I could see every detail. The exposed brick walls, the plants hanging from the ceiling, the smell of freshly baked pastries. 2 days later, I was scrolling through Instagram and saw a photo that made my heart stop. It was the exact coffee shop from my visualization, posted by someone I followed who lived in Austin. The caption said, my favorite spot for remote work. That's when I knew something real was happening. I started paying closer attention to these synchronicities, and they were everywhere. I'd think about someone I hadn't talked to in years, and they'd call me the next day. I'd have a random craving for a specific type of food, and then pass a restaurant serving exactly that. I'd need information about something, and the perfect resource would literally fall into my lap. But the biggest synchronicity was yet to come. In May, I was having lunch alone at that same coffee shop where I'd found the Wallace Wattles book. I was reading another manifestation book and journaling about my goals when this woman at the next table leaned over. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, "but I couldn't help noticing what you're reading. Are you into personal development?" Her name was Sarah, and she was a life coach who'd moved to Cleveland from Austin to take care of her elderly mother. We ended up talking for 2 hours about manifestation, consciousness, and the power of belief. As we were getting ready to leave, she said something that gave me chills. "You know, I have this feeling we were meant to meet. I'm actually looking for someone to help me with my online business. I need someone good with data and organization, but also someone who understands this work. Would you be interested in learning more?" I almost started crying right there in the coffee shop. For months, I'd been visualizing work that mattered, work that helped people transform their lives. And here was the universe delivering exactly that opportunity. Sarah explained that she was building an online coaching program and needed help with course creation, email marketing, and client management. She could teach me everything I needed to know, and eventually, if things went well, I could run my own coaching practice under her mentorship. The pay was 3 times what I was making at my data entry job. I quit my job the next week. Working with Sarah was like stepping into a completely different dimension of existence. For the first time in my adult life, I woke up excited about my day. I was learning skills that fascinated me, helping people who were on their own transformation journeys, and slowly but surely building toward the vision I'd been holding in my mind. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were definitely moments when the old doubts crept in. About 2 months into working with Sarah, I had what I can only describe as a complete crisis of faith. I was making good money, learning new skills, and generally much happier, but I was still living in Cleveland, still in my tiny apartment, still far from the complete life transformation I'd been visualizing. I started wondering if maybe I was being too greedy, too unrealistic. Maybe this was as good as it gets. One particularly difficult night in July, I was feeling so discouraged that I almost stopped doing my visualization practice altogether. I lay in bed thinking, what if this is all just magical thinking? What if I'm deluding myself? But then I remembered something Joe Dispenza had said about the gap between intention and manifestation. He talked about how most people give up right before their breakthrough because they can't see the evidence of their progress yet. So instead of giving up, I doubled down. I started doing my visualizations twice a day, once in the morning and once at night. I began writing down everything I was grateful for, including all the amazing changes that had already happened. I started acting as if my complete transformation was already inevitable. And that's when everything shifted into hyperdrive. In August, Sarah told me she was planning to move back to Austin in the fall and asked if I'd be interested in relocating to work with her in person. She said she'd help me find a place to live and would give me a significant raise to offset the moving costs. I said yes before she even finished the question, but here's the part that still gives me goosebumps. When Sarah showed me listings for apartments in Austin, one of them was in the exact neighborhood I'd been visualizing. Not similar, exact. I recognized the street names, the type of buildings, even the little park I'd imagined walking through. We moved to Austin in October, and I rented this beautiful one-bedroom apartment with huge windows and hardwood floors. It wasn't quite the house from my visualizations, but it felt like a stepping stone, a perfect bridge between where I'd been and where I was going. The first morning I woke up in Austin, I made coffee and stood by those big windows, looking out at the Texas sunrise, and I literally started crying. Not sad tears, pure joy tears. I could feel that this was just the beginning, and I was right. Within 6 months of moving to Austin, my life was completely unrecognizable. Sarah promoted me to head of operations for her coaching business, which was growing rapidly. I was making more money than I'd ever imagined possible, doing work that felt deeply meaningful. But more importantly, I was becoming someone I actually liked. The confidence I'd been visualizing was becoming real. I started making friends easily, deep, authentic friendships with people who shared my interests and values. I joined a hiking group, took salsa dancing lessons, volunteered at a local animal shelter. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was actively participating in my own existence instead of just enduring it. In March of this year, exactly 2 years after I'd found that book in the coffee shop, Sarah approached me with an offer that made my head spin. She wanted to expand the business and was offering me a full partnership. She would handle the high-level coaching, and I would run my own branch focused on helping people with career and life transitions. But even more amazingly, she offered to invest in helping me buy a house, the house that would become the headquarters for our expanded business. When the realtor showed me the third property, I had to sit down. It was the house from my visualizations. The hardwood floors, the huge windows, the oak trees outside, even the layout of the kitchen. Everything was exactly as I'd imagined it, down to the smallest details. I'm sitting in that house right now, recording this story. But the external changes, as incredible as they've been, aren't even the most important part of this transformation. The real miracle is who I've become in the process. I used to be someone who lived in constant fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of being truly seen. Now I wake up each day with this deep sense of trust in life, in myself, in the process of becoming. I know now that we're all constantly creating our reality, whether we're conscious of it or not. The only difference is whether we're creating by default or by design. I used to feel like life was something that happened to me. Now I know that life is something that happens through me. Every thought I think, every emotion I feel, every action I take is literally shaping my future reality. The woman who was trapped in that studio apartment in Cleveland feels like a character from a story I once read. Not because I've forgotten her or dismissed her, but because I understand now that she was always just one version of me, the version I was creating unconsciously through my thoughts and beliefs. When people ask me how this transformation happened so quickly, I tell them it's not magic, it's physics. Everything in the universe is energy, including our thoughts and emotions. When we align our mental and emotional energy with what we want to create, we literally become a magnet for those experiences. But here's the part that might surprise you. The manifestation isn't really about getting stuff. It's about becoming who you're meant to be. All the external changes in my life happened because I first changed internally. I had to believe I was worthy of love before I could attract loving relationships. I had to believe I was capable of success before I could manifest meaningful work. I had to believe I deserved happiness before I could create a joyful life. The work I do now with clients going through their own transformations has taught me that everyone's journey is different, but there are certain universal principles that always apply. First, you have to get crystal clear about what you actually want, not what you think you should want or what other people want for you. Your desires are not random. They're clues to your purpose. Second, you have to be willing to feel your future reality before you see it. This was the hardest part for me, but also the most crucial. Your emotions are the language your subconscious mind understands. When you feel genuinely grateful for what you want as if you already have it, you're programming your subconscious to seek out and recognize the opportunities that will make it real. Third, you have to trust the process even when you can't see immediate results. There's always a gap between planting the seed and harvesting the fruit. Most people give up during that gap, but that's exactly when the most important work is happening beneath the surface. Fourth, you have to be willing to take inspired action. The law of attraction isn't about sitting on your couch wishing for things to appear. It's about aligning your inner state with your desires, and then following the opportunities and insights that arise from that alignment. And finally, you have to be willing to become someone new. The life you want requires the version of you who's worthy of that life. You can't create lasting change from the same level of consciousness that created your current circumstances. Last week, I got a message from a woman named Jennifer who's been following my work. She said, "Maya, a year ago I was in the exact same place you described, stuck, depressed, feeling like life was happening to me instead of through me. I started applying what you teach, and I just wanted you to know that I got my dream job, moved to the city I'd always wanted to live in, and met the most amazing man. But more than that, I actually like who I'm becoming. Thank you for showing me what's possible." Messages like that remind me why I went through everything I went through. My old life wasn't a mistake or a waste of time. It was preparation. It gave me the empathy and understanding I needed to help other people navigate their own transformations. Sometimes I think about that version of me who was drowning in Cleveland, and I want to reach back through time and tell her, hold on, trust the process. The life you can barely dare to dream about is not only possible, it's inevitable, as long as you don't give up on yourself. If you're listening to this and you're in that place right now, stuck, scared, feeling like your dreams are impossible, I want you to know that everything can change. Not someday, not when you're ready, not when circumstances are perfect. Right now. Your current reality is not your permanent reality. It's just the result of patterns you've been running unconsciously. The moment you decide to become conscious, to take responsibility for your inner state, to align your thoughts and emotions with what you want to create, that's the moment everything starts shifting. It might not happen overnight. It took me about 18 months to completely transform my life. But I promise you, if you commit to this process, if you're willing to believe in yourself and trust in the power of conscious creation, you will look back on this moment as the turning point, the day you stopped existing and started living. The sun is setting now over Austin, casting this golden light through the windows of my dream house, and I'm filled with such overwhelming gratitude for this incredible journey, not just for where I've arrived, but for every step along the way, even the difficult ones, especially the difficult ones. Because here's what I know now that I wish I'd known then. You are not stuck. You are not limited by your circumstances, your past, or other people's opinions of what's possible for you. You are a powerful creator, and every single day, with every single thought and emotion, you are literally sculpting your future reality. The universe is not neutral. It's not indifferent. It's not working against you. The universe is actually conspiring to bring you everything you need for your highest growth and greatest joy. But you have to be willing to receive it. You have to be willing to believe you deserve it. You have to be willing to become the person who naturally lives that reality. Your dreams are not too big. Your desires are not selfish. Your vision of a better life is not unrealistic. It's a glimpse of what's possible when you align with your true power. So what are you waiting for? What would you dare to dream if you knew it was possible? What would you dare to become if you knew you had support? The life you truly want is not just possible. It's calling to you. It's time to answer. If this story resonated with you, if something inside you is saying, yes, this is what I've been waiting to hear, then comment below. I trust the process. Let that be your declaration, your commitment to your own transformation. And if you're ready to take the next step, if you're ready to stop dreaming about change and start creating it, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. I share new stories and strategies every week to help you manifest the life you truly want. Remember, you are more powerful than you know, more loved than you can imagine, and more capable of creating magic than you've ever dared to believe. The universe is waiting for you to remember who you really are. I trust that it's already beginning. If you believe that your dreams are possible, that the universe is conspiring to help you, and that you have the power to create the life you truly want, comment below. I trust the process. And if this story inspired you to take action on your own transformation, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps me reach more people who are ready to stop existing and start living. What's your next step going to be?